a lot more days that we have precipitation, whether it's rain or snow, but really almost 2/3 of the days of our year have no precipitation. And so, especially in the wintertime when you're thinking of, uh, plowing snow off sidewalks and things like that, or, being able to get around, that actually the vast majority of days actually our pavements are dry, especially if they're cleared. And so those are days that are able to get around. And then just temperatures. You can see we have 3 months, December, January, and February, where we have temperatures below 32, which allows us to really be able to do winter activities and have extended seasons of winter activities. And this is not, a lot of cities will have temperatures that rise above, and we do, even in December, rise above freezing, but we can really count on that the temperature will stay below, which allows us to have ice skating rinks, snow on the ground, and all of that. Like I said, that's not for those that maybe grew up in Duluth, that's a normal condition, but for most cities in the United States, northern cities, that is not. Even like Chicago, they just got a bunch of snow, almost a foot, but that snow isn't guaranteed to last. It may last a few weeks if the winter stays cold, but they don't really have extended amount of snow cover for long periods of time that we do. And we can take advantage of that because we have that. So what does it mean to have a successful winter city? Well, it's reframing winter culture and more positivity. Instead of looking at it as winter and cold and snow as a negative, how do we turn it into a positive? It's there, we get a guarantee to have it, and how can we be more positive about it? Also rethinking our streets. I would say we have in this area struggled with that. Our streets are not designed with the thought of that we get winter and snow, but they can absolutely be, and they should be designed thinking that we have snow. How do we manage our streets? How do we manage our snow plowing? All of that can all be thought of, knowing that we get snow in winter. We right now currently kind of have an approach that, we need to get rid of snow, eliminate it, remove it off our streets and sidewalks as fast as possible, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And there's other places that do it very differently. They kind of embrace that it snows and how can they make that work. So basic principles of winter design, really creating a successful winter place is that working with the weather. And you've heard me kind of mention that, we get this weather, we get the cold temperatures, we get the snow. How do we work with it? And instead of trying to hide from it, lock ourselves inside, avoid it at all costs, how can we embrace it and work with it? And then there are some things, it's dark. So using color, art, visual interest, make places more interesting. That will draw people. From a city government perspective, what permits and fees that are detracting from making things better outside, whether it's patio seating or patios, things like that. What are things that are in the way, kind of hindrances to making really more active spaces outside in the wintertime? And how can we, instead of making it difficult to do that, how do we make it easy to do that? As I just mentioned about the right type of infrastructure, it is really important. We are a winter city, so the infrastructure and how it's managed, how it's designed is really important and should reflect that this is a winter city. Snow management, as I mentioned, is really key and important. Having that proper and done well, recognizing that it is going to snow regularly. And then we hire summer temporary workers, so workers in the summertime months. We should think about that for the wintertime, to handle the uniqueness of winter and really creating these vibrant places. So, and a big thing is creating an invitation. This is a parklet that you're seeing here, and just trying to make a place cozy, warm, inviting that people want to be in. People will gravitate to places that are inviting. And so what are those things? Well, one of them is windbreaks. It's a really key one, is having, people won't congregate outside in the wintertime where the wind is blasting them. So, thinking of where the wind is and how to have windbreaks. Maybe they're a wall, maybe it's trees, evergreens, things like that. Maybe it's some things that can move around depending on the direction of the wind, but really thinking about wind and windbreaks. Blankets, this time, this year with COVID, instead of having blankets provided, encourage people to bring their own blankets. Fire pits and heating elements obviously are really that encourages people to stay a lot longer if there's some kind of heating element. Fire pit, lighting, lighting's really important. Long dark days really makes a big difference to have the lighting, and to have lighting that's inviting, not just blasted lighting that with floodlights and things like that, but really inviting lighting. And then seating and standing areas, seating that doesn't absorb the cold, that doesn't, obviously things, will get cold, but there's certain materials that absorb cold a little bit more extreme than others. Wood, these hay bales, they absorb the cold a lot less than, metal, things like that. As I mentioned, lighting, the dark period really is November to March. It's we're starting to see the extended days now that we're in February. But, how can we be creative with lighting and strategic and manage the darkness? I talked about managing the snow. There are a lot of different opportunities to manage darkness. And then, as humans, our traditional lighting that we had was campfire, low to the ground lighting. And so how can we recreate that? That is something that we as humans are comfortable with, low to the ground lighting. So not all lighting has to come up from above. Some lighting can be just really done well low on the ground. And then interactive spaces. How can we create spaces in the winter that are interactive? You can see this. This is actually, this photo here is of New York City and seesaws that people are on during the winter time. But you have add in your fire pits. Well, you can add in hot chocolate or roasting, s'mores, marshmallows, things like that encourage people to hang around, to embrace that area, enliven the spaces. So, but things have to be interesting things for people to do and interact with each other. I think that is really key. In a lot of ways, it's no different than trying to create any kind of vibrant public space. It has to be interactive, has to be inviting, but in the winter, paying attention to the unique conditions of what winter brings us. And you definitely want to have something where people are encouraged to stay longer. That is really a big thing. And so heating elements, fire pits, things like that are really important. Windbreaks during the daytime, areas in the sun, so that an area in the sun that is out of the wind can feel 20, 30 degrees warmer just by being in the sun. Locally, Bend Paddle with their new tap room really captured that by having it face their new tap room facing the south and the west, where the sun comes in all day and afternoon, and it really does change that. Makes it much more inviting and pleasant and warmer feeling place. Programs and events. So these are really important, and that they happen regularly, not just a once a year event, even though those are important, but you would want to have a continuous number of programs and events going on throughout the year, so that they're happening daily, weekly activities. And so what you can see here is movies in the park during the winter. And so you actually can have movies a lot earlier than our movies in the park that we have in the summer, which at the early ones start, nearly at 10 p.m. Here, it gets dark at 5 p.m. So a movie in the park could be something held much earlier. I even think of Superior did their Lake Superior Ice Festival last week, over the weekend, and they had fireworks, and the fireworks didn't have to be late at 9, 10 o'clock at night. They could be at 6 p.m. at night to 5 p.m. at night, a lot earlier. And so those are really benefits there, that you can have things happening earlier. Infrastructure. So it's really key, and I was mentioning that getting the infrastructure design right is really important, with the understanding that we do have winter and we have snow, and how do we make that work? So for people walking and cycling, it's really important that it's limiting the number of street crossings with motor vehicles. Those are, really kind of trying to separate pedestrians and cyclists from motor vehicles is really key. And then maintenance is key, that the facilities that people are walking and cycling on are consistently and predictably available and clean. So just in a lot of ways, how we have our streets. We know our major roads are consistently available for us. Even in the really big snowstorm from in 2019 that the major streets, the Superior streets and 4th streets, they were consistently plowed, and while they weren't wide, they were available even during that major snowfall. And it was expected that they would be, and so that is an important thing, to be that we maintain it. And I have a picture here of a sidewalk snowplow. That actually, this one is a Parks Department one that it goes by my house in Portland Square, and they're out there usually the next day after it snows, plowing it. And so there's a lot of equipment already available. There's a lot of equipment out there that's been designed to improve snow removal for walking and cycling, and the city of Duluth has equipment themselves, and so does the state of Minnesota. MnDOT has equipment like this as well that help with sidewalk clearing and path clearing. And the Lake Walk, the Cross City Trail, and the Campus Connector Trail are all regularly plowed by the Parks Department of the city of Duluth. So we already have elements of this in place, which is great. Snow management. This is a school in Finland where you can see they get snow and winters like we do, but it doesn't prevent the kids from riding their bikes to school. But what does prevent is the infrastructure. If the infrastructure is not in place and it's not and the snow's not managed properly, then you won't, then you basically won't have very many people willing to bike. But if it's managed properly, if the infrastructure is in place, as I talked about before, separated facilities, great facilities, then people will do it. And you can see that in the evidence of here. But it also, I'd say, here in this region, we really work hard to clear all the snow, to get the pavement to a dry condition where you can see the pavement. And not in cities in Finland, that's not the goal. The goal is that they manage the snow, that it's groomed instead of plowed, and they put in traction pieces to make the snow more, where you can walk and bike on it, and you still have traction. So so it's more of snow management, which is something that we also know about. I mean, we manage the snow. We manage our cross-country ski trails. We manage the Spirit Mountain. So we do have snow grooming and management practices in this region. So we have that know-how. But we just don't apply that right now to our streets and sidewalks and trails. Winter patios, it really is important. And you can actually, in this region, you really have seen it, especially because of COVID, you can really see, but even happening before COVID, places were starting to create all-year patios. Important to note that it's not trying to recreate a summer experience, but important to keep paying attention to sunshine and wind. Patios in the sun are much better. Patios that block the wind are great. Blankets, or encourage people to bring their own, as I had mentioned earlier, and creating comfortable places, inviting places to stand and gather. In a winter, people may be more willing to stay standing than they are in the summer where they're looking to sit. So, and then recreation, and Sam is on this, and he'll talk more about this, but creating winter recreational routes, and the city of Duluth has done that. They've closed Lincoln Park Drive to motor vehicles so that it becomes a more winter recreation route, and we have cross-country ski routes that are all over that are winter recreation routes. But how can we do more that really connect the neighborhoods instead of having to drive necessarily to go skiing? How could we create a system of recreation routes that you can reach? In a lot of ways, it'd be similar to what the Duluth Traverse has done for mountain biking, of how creating a system that you don't have to drive your vehicle to the mountain bike trail, but that you can ride to it from wherever you live or wherever you are. And winter gear share, building on structures that are already there, local universities that rent out gear, other community organizations and government agencies that are renting out gear, places where people go. Some community gear share is run out of the public library. And so I don't think here we have any of that, but just a lot of building on what is here and realizing that gear, especially for people who aren't used to embracing the winter and the outdoors, they may want to try, but they are reluctant, and they certainly don't want to purchase expensive equipment if they're not sure. And so having rental equipment and shared equipment can really help with getting people out. and that thinking of people of all ages and beginners. So enlivening winter places, there's cities all over the, northern hemisphere that are really have these great winter places. But this isn't about trying to copy and paste what other places are doing, but really about learning from each other, and we've tried a lot of different things here. So it's adapting, trying, improving, implementing. And then the big one is trying to integrate and not segregate. Really, how do we integrate everybody where people are connected and can do things, and it's not segregated from one group. Like a good example that would be that making something inaccessible that people won't even want to try. Certainly want to think of how can we make it where it's accessible for everybody. So, I mentioned, so what's happening here? Locally, we do have all year maintenance of infrastructure, trails, lake walk, cross city trail, and campus connector. They're plowed all winter. This is a picture of the campus connector. I think from last week I took this. You can see it's well plowed. This is looking between UMD and St. Scholastica. Open streets, winter open streets that are closed to motor vehicles, but then open for everybody to walk and bike and stroll along. Lincoln Park Drive is that. But we also do this every year. We close a certain, number of streets. Seven Bridges Road, portions of that, and Western Skyline Parkway, portions of that are closed in the winter, not plowed. And so those become really open streets. And how can we maintain them and really work with them to, groom that snow and really make it usable? Events, that's something we always are doing in this area. There was the Lake-Superior Ice Festival last weekend, cold fronts coming up. And then there was a one-time event, Better Block, of showing kind of how do we do events in the, in our urban neighborhoods. So it's not just a recreational area, but how do we, improve our urban areas? And I'll have some pictures of that. And then policy changes, all-season patios, embracing the all-season, and what policies are in place that are preventing us from creating really vibrant places. And so looking into that. Here's some photos of the Lake Superior Ice Festival. There was ice carving and fireworks. The cold front over the years that took place in Canal Park, just showing you how people used it. This ice trail was used for dog walking with a person in their ice skates. So people are willing to embrace this and try different things, and we just have to figure out ways to what works, what doesn't work, and how do we make things and continue to try things and make things work. You can see some exercise classes held outside during the cold front celebration. Curling was a little curling rink was put up, and a sled hill in Canal Park. So that was embraced, that people loved, from the big snow piles from clearing the parking lots. And then the hillside event that I wanted to show about Better Block. And you can see this parking lot that where an old oil change place was at the corner of 4th Street and 6th Avenue East. And then for a weekend, a few years ago, was transformed into early November weekend, was transformed into what a kind of a central gathering spot, including with cold weather, could be and feel like. And so it really does transform. This was done over a weekend, and a lot of people showed up in a spot that most people probably would consider today and before we put this as a kind of inhospitable place. And so there's a lot that can be done to really create these really lively places, regardless of weather. The city of Duluth, they've made some changes during COVID. They've eliminated fees for parklets and sidewalk use permits, which are the cafes, outdoor patio seating, and temporary uses such as dining and parking lots. And those have been extended through this year. And so this is the picture I have, is one that is in Canal Park. You can see they've extended a patio sidewalk area into their parking lot. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sam to talk about more of what City of Duluth Parks is doing.
All right, perfect. Thanks, James. That's a lot of great information. Of course, my internet is having issues, so I'm on my phone. Do you have access to my slides?
I don't know if I do.
I think I emailed them.
But you can start, and I can pull them up.
Perfect. Maybe you'll just get a lot of me talking to the screen. Awesome. So as mentioned, my name is Sam Worley. I work with the City of Duluth Parks and Recreation as a recreation specialist. So I kind of focus on how do we provide recreational opportunities to people all across town, all ages, all year round. And that's a challenge. Duluth's 25 miles long, and so we try to reach different neighborhoods. And we also have to think about the seasons. And what a lot of what James mentioned is the complexity of winter, kind of from all angles, and all the factors that go into both planning things for winter and facilitating things for winter and participating in activities or getting outside. And Duluth has a lot of people that are quite hardy and like those outdoor activities in the winter. And there's also a group of people that may not be as comfortable. There's a lot of those barriers or factors that are tough to overcome in the winter. And so I'm hoping to just highlight a few things from Parks and Rec in terms of some events we have, some accessibility pieces about what it's like to access different parks and different trails throughout the winter, and then give a couple more resources about what's possible and where to get more info on some of these things. And so one of the pieces that got mentioned a few times was our cold front event, which I'll get to in just a second. But as you're thinking about recreation in the winter, however you feel like participating or you like to participate, there's a few things that you can kind of keep in mind as you're wanting to get outside. And I have a couple of these here I'll run through quickly. So thinking about cold weather clothing. There's various ways to look at this, and there's specific brands and styles of clothes and materials and things to look into, and you can go down a rabbit hole of all those if you'd like. But the basics are fairly simple if you're not familiar. So in the winter when it's cold, being mindful of how we dress is important. And a couple things to keep in mind are if you're able to dress in layers, that's important and helps us regulate our temperature a little bit better as our activity level changes while we're outside. A couple things to consider are material and fit. Pretty commonly it comes up that people try to avoid wearing cotton in the winter, especially if you're exercising. And the issue with that is that cotton, when it gets wet, doesn't really help us retain any heat and can make us much colder pretty quickly. So something like wool, on the other hand, when it gets wet, it will still retain some of those heat preserving qualities. And so that is an ideal option for cold weather or winter activity. And then kind of within clothing is different equipment. And so maybe you're familiar with something like yak tracks or different styles of cleats that you can put on your shoes or boots that can just help deal with different slippery conditions, whether that's a trail that's been boot packed down that it gets kind of icy, or just a sidewalk that hasn't been hit with all the snow maintenance rounds yet. Another piece of planning for cold weather is looking ahead. So thinking through what your day is going to look like, what you're hoping to do. And part of that is the weather. It can change really quickly. You'll hear me talk about the weather in our planning recreation activities a little bit later, looking at this weekend. And so just being aware of what's coming up either later that day or later that week, and planning accordingly. A piece of that is communicating with friends or family. And so this one often comes up year round in different recreational activities, especially if you're participating in something alone or in an area that you're not familiar with. It's really easy to text or leave a note for somebody saying like, hey, I'm going walking at Chester Park after work for about an hour and I'll be done about 6. And that just is a way to offer up some communication if there's slippery conditions or anything like that. And don't be afraid to ask for help. And so there's groups like myself at Parks and Rec and our team, a lot of different organizations around town that are experts in these different specific activities year round. Don't be afraid to reach out to those groups or local, the Trails Condition Facebook groups or all these different groups that have knowledge. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for suggestions or ideas or tips. And kind of going back to that cold front or the cold weather clothing piece, just be aware that if you're doing vigorous exercise, you may be a little chilly to start your day, and that's okay. And you can anticipate your body temperature rising. Just want to avoid any significant sweating. So once our sweat kind of makes our clothing wet, that can really affect our temperature overall and lead to some severe cold. So we can head to the next slide there. Awesome. So these next couple of slides are just talking about different ways that our parks and trails can be accessed in the winter and what that looks like. Obviously, I think a lot of people think of parks as a non-winter thing, but there's some amazing places that you can go experience in the winter fairly easily. And one of those pieces is finding access to these places along bus lines. So if you don't have reliable transportation in the winter in terms of like a car, or if you're not comfortable enough on a bike or on foot to go to reach some of these further places, the bus line goes right past a lot of our parks and trails. And so there's a list here of places, parks and trails that are, within less than 2 blocks of a bus line. And so just to highlight a couple, Kingsbury Creek, that first one, or Fairmont Park, that's right along Grand Avenue. And that trailhead offers access to the Superior Hiking Trail, some Cogs mountain bike or fat bike or snowshoe multi-use trails, as well as the DWP trail. Lincoln Park, you can get right to the bottom of Lincoln Park on 3rd Street. As James mentioned, that's where the city has closed a section of road for the winter to allow some more pedestrian traffic, and I'll show a map of that in just a second. And we'll also have a sledding opportunity focused around Lincoln Park that I'll mention later. That's starting today. And then a couple other ones, Chester Park, for example. I think there's 3 bus lines that butt up to Chester Park in some way on 4th Street and 8th Street and up at kind of College Street and Kenwood Ave. So if you're looking to get to a place and use the buses, or you need to use the buses, check that out. There's a lot of ways to access these places, even if you don't have a vehicle yourself. All right, so like I just mentioned, each winter, the city has closed a few sections of road to allow for just a wider, flatter space for people to walk or snowshoe or run or bike or exercise that isn't a vehicle used space. So this just allows for a wider area without having to worry about vehicles being right next to you. And it's a little more stable, more flat than like a trail that might have some steep sections or some steep relief on either side. And so these sections are just east of Glenwood Street. So that's East Skyline Parkway, kind of in the Hawk Ridge area, Seven Bridges Road area, West Skyline Parkway out at 100th Avenue West. And then the picture that is on that slide is of the Lincoln Park closure. And so that's closed right now from the 10th Street Bridge down to the turnaround kind of in the middle of the park is just up from the playground. And then 6th Street, the 6th Street entrance is also closed. So that section of road has a slight incline up throughout the park, but it's typically pretty packed down by foot traffic in that area, and is a great option to have a quieter space to have a nice winter walk right in town. All right, a couple other options for winter walking. That's fun to highlight that James chatted a little bit about earlier. So there's a couple areas that are gravel paths that are not plowed in the winter, including the DWP and Wabazeshekana, formerly the Western Waterfront Trail. And so those aren't plowed regularly, but they do see a fair amount of traffic and are often packed down pretty smoothly by other foot traffic in the area. And those are both accessed at various points across town. And then, as James mentioned, 3 sections that are paved and plowed in the winter and kept up pretty routinely are Lake Walk, section of the Cross City Trail, and the Campus Connector. So that just provides a good opportunity for folks if mobility is a concern, or if just wanting familiar, wide, flat options. Those are great choices to get out and be active. So jumping more into my area of focus, which is activities and recreation resources. So I'll highlight a bit of what we do in our offering through Parks and Rec, and I'll also mention a couple things that are happening around town. And so a big one that we have coming up is our Cold Front event. So typically this has happened down either in Canal Park or Bayfront Park as a big one day or one weekend event with food trucks and concerts and sledding hill and skating and things like that. And so we shifted our plan a little bit this year due to COVID and not wanting to have everyone gather in one space for one big event. And we've taken the liberty to bring fun for a whole week. So starting this Saturday, we're going to be having an event or two per day for about a week to spread these out and offer a wide range of activities for folks to participate in. And this is a great chance for people just to go try something. And so we have a mix of styles. So there's a couple in-person activities for those that feel comfortable doing that. But there are some activities that are more passive. So that means that we set the activities up and have them up for a day or two, and people can go do them on their own time. And there's not much interaction with other people. So a couple of things that we're looking forward to for Cold Front in the coming week include a Yeti hunt. That'll be this weekend. So in my basement, I have a giant 5-foot tall, big foam Yeti. That's going to be hidden out in a city park. And on our Facebook and Instagram on Sunday, I'll be releasing a clue every hour for folks to go find that Yeti. And if you find that Yeti, take a picture with it and send it to us. You can be entered to win a prize. So just a fun way to get people out to maybe an area they haven't been to before. A couple other things we have going on include a luminary walk on the lake walk. So what James had mentioned about kind of the lighting and our familiarity with light that's low to the ground is really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's what the luminary walk is. So on the lake walk between Canal Park, kind of by Indian Station at the corner there, up to the Vickers Complex, we're going to line the lake walk with candle luminaries from 5 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, the 11th. So that's a great chance to come walk down flat, smooth path, get out and enjoy a nice candlelit walk along the lake walk. A few other programs that we're offering through Parks and Rec this winter that are more repetitive and accessible for folks in terms of more than a one-time thing include we have ice skating down at Bayfront Park now from 3 to 7 during the weekdays. We have skates available for people to borrow for free during those open hours. We'll have a handful of snowshoe hikes coming up this month. And so if people are not familiar with trails or don't have snowshoes or haven't quite figured out what it takes to go do it, come join us. It's super easy. It's a very beginner level hike. You get a pair of snowshoes through us. We'll help you put them on, and we'll go for a 1 to 2 mile hike on a local trail. A great way to kind of get an intro to snowshoeing. Another thing that we have coming up is a couple outdoor skills classes. So just a different style of activity for people to get out in the winter. And so we'll be making your own char cloth, which is the tool used in fire making. And then we'll be practicing some compass skills in a couple classes later this February. On the screen on the right, you'll see our February 2021 programs. So that's listed on our website. We're coming out with more and more programs as we kind of get back in the swing of things and we're able to meet with people in person more often. All of our programs are planned and facilitated within current guidelines by the Minnesota Department of Health based on group size and social distancing and how we share equipment and stuff like that. Couple more activity resources to be aware of. We have a volunteer program that's running right now called Snow Stompers. So that's new this year. So that's a dedicated group of individuals who have volunteered. They're out there after every significant snowfall, snowshoeing on assigned sections of trail to make those sections of trail more user-friendly for a wider audience of users this winter. So those volunteer spots are full for this winter, but we'll be back next year. But a list of those trails that you can check out and know that they'll be more packed down after a significant snowfall is on our parks website. And the last couple options in terms of resources that we want to highlight include our equipment rental program. And so as James had mentioned, access to equipment, if folks aren't super familiar with an activity is a big issue. And so we wanted to find a way to get more people involved, get people the equipment that they need to try certain winter activities, even if they don't have access to their own. So that's things like snowshoes, ice skates, sleds, and even snow play toys and equipment. And so we have a fee assistance program that applies to these equipment rentals. So if the financial side of things is an issue for folks, we have a system to help with that, and we want to make sure we're able to get people out if they're interested. A couple other places that also do equipment rental that you can look into are Hartley Nature Center is going to be doing some equipment rental for our cold front event. And there's info on the website over the weekend, this coming weekend, the 6th and 7th. And then places like the UMD Rental Center and the St. Scholastica's Outdoor Pursuit have a variety of equipment that is available for rent for hourly and daily and longer rental periods. And then one final piece, we have a program called Sled Sheds that is starting. Is it the second? Yeah, this afternoon. So we have 3 sled sheds that will be out in different parks around town. And if you have old sleds, you want to leave them there, feel free. It's a place for people to have access to a sled at a sledding hill if they don't have their own, or if there's a park in your neighborhood that you don't have a sled on you, there might be some there for you to use. So keep an eye out for more details on that later today and this week. And this last piece, just more information. So again, cold front is coming up. Variety of activities. If you're comfortable being around other folks in a limited setting, we do have a couple events that will have registration required in advance. Otherwise, there are some passive opportunities for people just to go and enjoy some time outside and potentially win some prizes through us if you show us how you're playing outside in the next week. A couple websites there for our parks page and our Parks Facebook. That picture there is the SHT right up near Enger Park. And so you can see how a lot of the trails in between snow falls that are high traffic areas are fairly packed down by foot traffic. And so, you know, if the snow's soft, snowshoes are ideal, so we don't put big holes in the trail. But oftentimes after significant periods of cold with not a lot of new snow, trails are packed down to be walkable. And just know that Parks and Rec can be a resource. So if people have questions about activities or what trails look like or how to get involved or who to talk to, definitely reach out either via email or call our Parks line. That's one of our roles, and we're happy to help get people outside, whether that's something we provide ourselves or pointing people toward other resources. That's all I have. So Andrea, I'll send it back to you.
I really appreciate this presentations you both made, James and Sam. It was also great to see images of people out and enjoying winter and some of the beautiful sights that they were taking in. I'll open it up and create a little space here. If people have any questions that they want to ask of our speakers or information they might want to share about being active in the winter.
Hi, this is Linda from twinports.com, and I also have winterfun.com. And I'm wondering, how are you guys promoting your event?
Linda, the sound was cutting out just a little bit on your microphone. I heard you asking about how we're promoting, was it upcoming events or particular programs?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. Sam, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, so in terms of, I can speak to Parks and Recreation, how we're promoting. And so our typical planning for our programming and what we offer is a little thrown off right now. Typically, we announce a seasonal brochure, 3 times a year or so that has, 4 months of programs. We are releasing programs on a shorter notice now, kind of going month by month with all the changing guidelines that we're working around and working to be flexible and work within. In terms of our cold front event and some of these upcoming programs, we're using social media as much as we can to get the word out, and also updating our parks website. And those are the kind of the 2 main areas that we're advertising and promoting our events and programs this season.
Okay. Well, let me help. I'm working closely with the reader this year. The Winter Fun 101 guide is an annual guide that we did insert into the reader. We're also promoting this throughout the winter with distribution around the area. So for future, I would love to work with you guys and find out what you're doing. I think what you're doing is great. 11 years ago, I was working with the John Bear Grease race, and so many of my friends and people that I've run into said there's nothing to do in the winter. So I said, yes, there is. And I started Winter Fun 101. And I'm so thrilled to see that people embrace winter because, you know, like Nikki over at the Lake Superior Ice Festival said, we have a good 6 months of adverse weather here in the Northland, so we should embrace it. And so however I can help you guys, let me know.
Thank you so much for being a winter enthusiast, Linda. I appreciate that, and the some of the art you create out in the public spaces too. That made me think. I was wondering if there. I was really inspired by some of the lighting and hearing about a luminary walk that's being proposed. Is there any information about winter art or public art or ways to get involved in creation during the winter months, whether it's indoors or outdoors, I guess?
Are you asking me or the crew?
I'll start with the crew here and see
Okay.
what they think, but
Good.
I am definitely interested in the input of other folks here too.
I know Stevie was mentioning something with the Duluth Art Institute. Stevie, could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'll just throw that link in the chat as well. The Duluth Art Institute just recently dropped a series of classes that are coming up starting in February that are to kind of encourage mindfulness and challenge people to see winter in a new light. So I think 3 of the 4 classes are outdoors and 1 is online. And they all have this kind of winter focus and are also geared towards beginners learning new things like drawing or photography, things like that. So those should be really fun. And I personally am definitely planning on checking out, there's a snowshoe photography class that I think would be really interesting.
Thanks,
That's a great
Stevie.
idea. That's a cool opportunity. I was just going to jump in on a much less formal level in terms of art and expressing creativity in the winter. Going to plug a little bit for Cold Front. One of our events is just a citywide snow building extravaganza. So on Monday, head to your city park, your local neighborhood park, build any creation that you would like. Make a snow angel, do whatever you want. We're hoping to see what people send in terms of just getting out, enjoying the winter, and expressing their artistic skills.
And Sam, is our businesses participating in that? I saw like, was it Ursa Minor or something that had snow dumped in their front parking lot so that they could build a snow sculpture? Or is that just certain businesses are doing it themselves?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that's something else that's down in the craft district. I don't know who, I wish I knew who was putting it on. We should highlight that. Yeah, I've seen a few big sculptures down there. So that's not us, but it is very cool. There's big, huge, kind of like shipping container boxes of looks like going to be snow sculptures eventually. So if you're driving around, definitely go check out those sculptures. Looks like it's going to be cool.
Linda, did you have something you were wanting to share about this?
No, I was wondering if you
Oh, Linda, you're breaking up. It's hard to. Maybe Linda, could you add your comment and possibly into the chat because you're breaking up. Those hard to understand.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you.
Well, Linda's adding that in there too, the Duluth Winter Festival in Lincoln Park. Awesome. Thanks, Stevie. That's what's going on with some of the sculptures out there. I wondered if either of you would mention more generally the why is it important to go outside at all? Like, why can't we just huddle up inside with our hot chocolate and just stay put until it gets warm again?
Well, I can start, Sam, and you can add in. I just want to, there's some basic just human necessities So yes, shelter is one of those and wanting to stay inside, but also being outside is a really important one for physical and mental and social health. Getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night is one, so there's these basic things that are really important, and being outside is one of those. And so it's good for our mental well-being, our physical health, to be able to get outside, especially to get into nature. And so that's a big reason. So Sam.
Yeah, along those same lines, it's like you mentioned, it's a lot easier to stay inside in the winter. But finding ways like this to encourage people and give people the resources to get outside just opens up those folks to all the benefits of, just from my perspective, being outside and those benefits of nature. Getting outside even for like 5 minutes, is shown to like lower your heart rate and reduce stress, and all these really big benefits to us that we kind of overlook as kind of like buzzword things, but those are real physical changes that can happen to us when we spend time outside. Yes, in the winter it might be harder to not kind of clinch up and shiver, but can be a little more difficult to find that relaxing time outside. But finding activities, and as well as looking for, in some situations, that social connection that isn't happening as much now, is a bit more accessible outdoors.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely the social connection part is, I'm feeling that a lot lately these days. It's the safest and pretty much only way I'm seeing folks. So I love the suggestions on how to create warmish spaces outdoors, everything from the seating and fire pits and lighting to make that a little more comfortable and keep people around longer.
Yeah, and I mentioned a lot of what like the city or a business group could do, but I didn't mean to just point to them. This is what we all can do. I have a neighbor who created a little fire pit. I don't know if it's city code related, but they have a snow packed seating area and a little fire pit in their front yard, and the neighbors we all gather there now in the front. We've never done that before, and I have white lights on my front porch that I've left up. From Christmas, that just like, well, this is going to create a more inviting environment. So there's individual things that we can do as well, with our neighbors, just for ourselves, that makes an outside environment more, inviting to be.
And I think that ties into what you talked about a lot earlier, James, is just the kind of the attitude towards winter, and that term of embracing it and having a positive outlook on it, and not wishing it was something else. So finding those little things that can make a big difference for us, both individually and as collectively, to be looking forward to those things during the winter.
Sam, I agree. Yeah, I see Linda is still typing. So, but it is now after 1, so I don't want to necessarily hold people on. But I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm just kind of still in your line, Andrea, but I really appreciate everybody and being here for this today.
Yeah, much gratitude for everyone who joined in the conversation today and the presentations, especially James, Sam. Thank you for the information you shared. Encourage everybody to join us for the rest of Winter Bike Week. Check that out on zeitgeistarts.com and be a part of Cold Front happening this weekend and through the next week. I'll stay on the line here just a little bit. If folks have other comments that they want to chat about, but thank you everyone for being here today and a part of this conversation.